and I have the lead with a company out here called Opus Works, and I am thrilled to introduce somebody who we happen to have the privilege of being a customer. Now, I've told her if this is not to be a sales pitch. I want you to hear the story. I want to hear the lessons learned. Blended learning is not easy. We've been doing it for 25 years since we've been blended learning from our beginning. So we've learned a few things, and hopefully today we'll be able to share a few tips that will help you with OpEx, with transformation, and with creating your own learning and in helping in the context. So thank you for the discussion as we got kicked off. Jennifer is the head of operational excellence at Nielsen. She is the proud owner of several patents. I'm not going to go through, okay, let's be precise, 2 patents. We don't want to be any confusion between 2 or 3 patents. And this is something that I can't quite figure out. Maybe you can help me. But how can somebody be a Florida State football fan and a Kentucky basketball fan? So we'll leave that one up there, so when we gather later on, that might be a question that you ask Jennifer if you can't find anything else. So Jennifer, we're eager to hear your story about blended learning, and thank you for being here.
All right, very, very excited to share this story with you today. And Rob, thank you for a lovely introduction. So at Nielsen, we have been doing BPI for over 10 years, business process improvement. So it's a compilation of Lean and Six Sigma. And over the past couple of years, we've had the great opportunity to work with Rob and his team at Opus Works. Just to briefly introduce you to Nielsen, we are the TV ratings people. But we actually operate in over 100 markets globally with 40,000 associates. So give you a little bit of a taste of what we do.
Change never looks the same. It can be small, creating a connection, finding a new fan, shifting your point of view, or it can be big, connecting all the dots, reinventing the way you work, transforming how you see the world. But the one thing about change that always stays the same is that it never stops. And we never stop moving. So you know what's next for your business. No matter what change looks like, know your next move. Whether it makes things simpler or more complex, know your next opportunity, because connecting you to what's next is what drives us forward. Know what's next. And you'll get there first.
So we are positioning ourselves as the science behind what's next. We measure what people buy in stores and obviously what people are watching across a variety of medias. And in doing that, we are collecting, ingesting, processing data, and delivering it back to our clients. And in many cases, we're trying to do that in a zero-touch environment. So while many of you in the OpEx space might have a manufacturing experience, we have our digital factory, and we are processing data through that factory. So we have a variety of folks in engineering and technology, we have folks in operations, and we have a lot of data scientists as well who help us do what we need to do every day. So I mentioned over 40,000 associates, 100+ countries. We've got our media space, our connect space, which is our watch and buy respectively. From a business process improvement program perspective, we actually are very closely aligned with GE in their program. Our CEO, Dave Calhoun, in 2007, the then CEO, brought that over. He used to work for Jack Welch, and so said, you know, I'm really passionate about this, and we're bringing it right in. So as I mentioned, we started over 10 years ago. To date, we've got about not quite 10% of our workforce trained at a belt level, which is, I think, pretty amazing, and a really strong return on investment. So started with a very small group of black belts, and more importantly, executive black belts. So leaders across the organization tapped to participate in what we called executive black belt training to help motivate our leaders to support this cause. Over about 2009 to 2016, our team expanded and grew up to 150 plus resources, really focusing on driving double-digit improvements. By the time we got to 2017, we actually took that team down to a small core of very capable A players. And they are folks who have this amazing toolkit for change management, program management, executing on a global scale, along with the Lean and Six Sigma toolkit. And we were facing a lot of cost pressures. For a number of years, we were sending people all around the globe to be there for in-person training. All of our belts went to 3 to 5 weeks of training, depending on where they came into the program. And that was not a sustainable model for us going forward. So we started taking our classroom training and adapting it to a virtual environment. I'm pretty sure most of you know this great equation, right? So when we think about what we're trying to achieve, it's about the ROI, okay? And I know we could get into some philosophical debates about what is the right outcome, but for my COO, that's the measuring stick for my team. So through the years, we've learned that we have some very critical X's that we need to focus on. And our deployment approach has been to really work on a country-by-country basis, make sure that we have our champions lined up, take a portfolio, prioritize it, then go find the people to bring into the training. And then we conduct the training element and dive into that one and talk about how we use a blended learning approach. And then we coach them and certify them through their project, okay? So 3 phases of our move to an all virtual blended learning environment. I'm going to talk first about how we adapted our in-person class. All right, so our Greenbelt curriculum was delivered over the course of 1 week in person with some prerequisites leading up to that. Because we had that big push on the travel restriction, we adapted it into 4 hours per day over 2 weeks, which pretty challenging to make that commitment over a 2-week time period. The great thing about it is we were very much able to reach folks who would not have had budget to come to an in-person class. We did integrate a real-life Nielsen case study using our digital factory. We had pretty good engagement, but when I stepped back, we were reliant on one single facilitator, which to reach across the globe was really not sustainable. And as much as we tried to get other instructors as part of our faculty, the reality for people to make a commitment of doing 4 hours a day for 2 weeks, maybe once or twice a year, that was a huge investment for them to build up their capability to deliver the curriculum. And we also lacked really getting a good understanding of do people truly understand the content and the material. So then we started our pilot for the all virtual blended learning. We actually plotted out a 20-week pilot. We kept everything around our process the same. So working with the champions in the countries, prioritizing the portfolio, identifying the candidates. And then we have them attend the training as a kickoff, and then they went through self-paced training. what I loved about it is a much more robust curriculum than anything we could deliver virtually in a live format. The students were able to schedule the time to do the modules online. We also had, because there was an online self-paced training component, we could see how are they performing on their assessments that they go through with each module. And with that, the instructor could then tailor the sessions to the class and really focus on the topics where people were experiencing challenges. Doing this really gave us the confidence to scale up from here. We did learn that we had an opportunity to use the portal better, and I know Rob mentioned that you can customize this to meet your needs and be very flexible with it. For us, at Nielsen, we don't care about DOE. It's not worth our time teaching it, so we pulled that out of the curriculum. What was important for us was the change management and project management, so we pulled that into the curriculum. Again, it was very, very flexible. We learned how to use the Opus Works portal for that. As I mentioned, we plotted this out over 20 weeks, allowing time for the students to complete the self-paced training, come into a virtual class session where they worked through the case study and applied the tools in a team setting. And in parallel, they'll also be working on their project. So really pleased with this result. You can see a snapshot of the progress, right? And that was very transparent. How are people progressing with their self-paced training? And we were able to communicate back with managers to let them know, hey, you know what? Sarah's doing really good. She's keeping up with everything. However, you know, can you please ask Joe to get out there and you know, make sure he makes the time for this commitment. And of course, it's all customized into this amazing portal. So where are we going from here? Well, we've now gone through a little bit more of a reduction in staff because we have really reached out into a variety of the organization. And with that reduced staff, I've said, Rob, you guys take care of this. And they can scale it up and deliver as much training as we need in a very cost-effective way. So we are continuing to rely on SMEs across Nielsen who have been trained to provide coaching and guidance to the folks going through the program. We're strengthening that with a community of practice by which people who have a passion, want to talk about process improvement, have ideas to share. They will get together on a regular basis, and you know, we can't forget that we have a best-in-class expert faculty to lean on within Opus Works. So I know some of you might just be interested in an overall framework for training, and I'll highlight some of the key wins that we've uncovered through the years. So we train in waves, and so for that we have either it's a specific country or it's a specific business unit. And we ask that a trained belt take on the role of a wave manager. And they're that person who's going to make sure folks are monitoring, make sure that the training is getting completed, and they're aligning the priorities and helping make sure that we're working on the most impactful things. It's very important that we size the prize early on because we want to continue demonstrating the ROI of this program. In terms of identifying candidates, it's all about the what's in it for me, right? So we see this certification of yellow belts and green belts as something those associates can put on their resume. It makes them much more marketable. And what we've actually done is on our green belt projects, the associates who are the core team members go through the yellow belt training. And in countries where we go through multiple waves, what we really like like to do is have the yellow belts then become the green belts in the subsequent wave, and then the green belts can actually be the coach once they've certified. So we're continuing to drive that knowledge. And then obviously blended learning, so important to have that opportunity to apply the tools and get feedback on a real live case study. And then, you know, like I said, we coach and certify. We've taken a very agile approach to our projects because we want things to linger on for months. And so we really try and push for the sprints to get where we need to go. And with that, I conclude my formal presentation. I'd love to answer any questions y'all might have. Yes.
Do you have a cutoff point where you say, like, after somebody's gone through class and taken the training, and if they don't complete by a certain date, do you make
1 year.
them take it, or 1 year?
Yeah, we give them a year.
To complete everything? And if they don't, what happens if they,
We just drop them off of our list and we're not following up with them.
can they retrain? Do you send them back to retrain?
Unless a manager hunts me down and says, I really want this person to go through and I am committing for them to go through that project and get it done, I generally don't.
Yeah.
Just because it's taking a spot away from somebody else who probably really wants it. We actually, over the past 2 years, we go through a nomination process on the projects as well as the people. And normally, we're training about 250 to 300 a year, I think, and probably have 5 people, 5 for every spot, so upwards of 1,500 nominations. So it's a very much of a desired skill in our team.
I was just going to add one thing to that, because everybody does something a little bit differently. What I think I'm hearing you say is completing the prerequisite e-learning before they come to the session, and then how long they have access to it. Is that kind of your question?
No, how long do you, after they've taken on the classes, they
After
have a
they've
project. If they don't complete the project, it's the cutoff, and you said a year, right? So after a year, if they don't complete that project, then
Okay,
they
got
basically
it.
out of the program.
Got it.
I'm assuming the 250 are green ones, right?
Green.
So what is your conversion rate? Would you
70%
are converting in like 1 year? And it only requires
certified.
So the wave manager has to technically be a certified and experienced green belt or black belt, and they have to be on site to be with them through the project? Or-
Not necessarily on site. We're a very virtual organization, so ideally we would have somebody based in that same geography and obviously the same language.
How do you gauge the soft skills that the typically the facilitation, the stakeholder management?
So one of the things that we require with the certification is for the champion and the process owner to sign off and provide feedback on the project. And so, where we do not go to the extent of observing and that sort of thing, we rely on that endorsement from the champion and the process owner that they're satisfied.
Was it always a highly sought after program, or was there anything you did to make it so?
I think early on, just because it was considered a leadership development program at Nielsen, and you had to be top 20% just to be considered. So that, in and of itself, and the fact that you had Dave Calvin endorsing it, and high visibility with the program, it just had a brand of its own.
So you mentioned that 70% of the green belts come out certified with the 250 that were there, and that you don't do observations, you rely on that sign-off. How are you validating that the project they did was sustainable? Are you doing any kind of 30, 60, 90? What are you doing there? And then I have a follow-up.
Yeah. So for the green belts, we have not conducted audits. Generally speaking, most of the greenbelt projects are cost efficiency plays. And so that business leader has taken the cost out of the business, and there's really no going back. Now for our black belts, We conduct audits at 6-month intervals, and that's an assignment that we give to newer team members as kind of an onboarding, go back and take a look at these projects. So, any follow-up?
Oh, I think I'm following up for a question.
Okay.
How much time do you typically say to the coaches that they have to allocate to their?
Usually, on average, an hour a week. We ask them to do 30 minutes one-on-one and treat it like a stand-up. What did you get done? What are you going to do? And what roadblocks are you having? Obviously, there's going to be time spent when, if and when they're doing a Kaizen or any of that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
For the executive training, you mentioned that was started back in 2008 when it was originally started. Is there any lessons learned from when you did that, or do you continue to do many trainings at the executive level?
We don't do any more training at the executive level. We hit a saturation point with that, and to be honest, the executives were not great about going and doing their projects. What we did find was if we paired up a greenbelt with an executive, and they swarmed the project together, the executive providing strategic direction and the greenbelt really doing the execution of the project, that was a win-win.
So the executive was learning while the greenbelt was doing the project? Was there an expectation for the executive to actually learn and then get certified?
They actually go through the entire training.
Okay.
Yeah. The executive black belt would go through our entire black belt curriculum.
Can you talk a little bit about the process of selecting content to be pulled out into an e-learning delivery as opposed to what should stay ILP and in person?
So generally speaking, most of the content is e-learning. What comes together in the virtual, and again, this is just us, it can be adapted anyway. What we wanted to focus on with those virtual sessions where people got together is applying and reflecting, right? Reflect on what did you struggle with, and let's button that up and make sure you're comfortable with it. Now let's go and apply with our case study and make sure you're comfortable with the tools and also learning the dynamics of how a team functions, which to me, that's like one of the best benefits of it too.
Follow-up question. So did you create all of that content, that virtual content yourself, or did you shop that out or purchase it?
So we've had, since I think 2009, a simulation that we've done for our in-person training. And when we went virtual in 2017, we adapted that case study to a digital environment. We use Google, we're a Google shop, so having everybody go in and work on files live was totally feasible. So that's how that case study works. Now, Rob's team has a whole other case study that if you wanted to use it, you could, and it's right there off the shelf. We just wanted something customized that was relevant for our business. People would understand.
I wanted to just jump in one thing because it's an important question about what to put into an e-learning or an online format versus what to do in a class session. And I think if you look at e-learning as being automating a manual process, a repetitive process, that's all this is. It's any other automation where you automate the repetitive knowledge transfer process. This is a Pareto chart. This is this. This is this. And you put it into an experience that can make that happen. But what technology can't do is to apply it. And so the whole measure is to set up the application of it. And just to follow on the question, there are lots of modules that were in the portal that are created as self-paced learning, plus there's a simulated case study. And like she said, you can mix and match and put those things together. Hope that helps.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
Hope I'm not okay. Okay, one thing, you just touched on modules. So is your training broke out, you said you have to self-learn, is it broken out into modules? Or is it all one big thing that they can stop and start?
It's all different modules, and even within that, you can start and stop. So I want to say average is about 30 minutes or so. There's probably some that are longer, right?
It's very, very topically focused.
Yeah.
For example, voice of customer is longer than SIPOC, you know, so it's really to teach a topic.
My second question is, you said that you have an agile project approach, so can you share with me a little bit about how you do it?
Yeah. So we, especially when we get to the improved phase, so we follow DMAIC methodology, generally speaking. But before somebody even comes into training, we've really scoped out their project fairly well. We have a charter in hand, and we have vetted the size of the prize. So that kind of fast tracks us a little through define and measure. And so there is an activity to go out and truly collect the data in the measure phase. Breaking it up, so and that it's more applicable to black belts than to the green belts. But a black belt, let's say they're working on, you know, a project across 3 countries, you know, they'll figure out the best way to do that data collection in the shortest amount of time, and just fast track it. And then when we get to the improved phase, we are doing sprints. So we say, all right, you know, let's create our backlog, and you know, then we just run through the agile approach and framework on the improvement cycles to get where we need to go.
Okay, so the most, I would say, the sprints for the improvement phase is where you can take that approach, and that's non-IT, I mean, that's no matter what.
Yeah.
So do you have to train the team to do that?
We train our black belts on Agile, and they know how to coach their green belts through that process. And we have created some Agile training that is used across the organization to showcase this concept, Agile, Scrum, whatever you want to call it, applies across any project management approach.
And my last question is, you mentioned you have COPs. So can you tell me a little bit about how often and what the content is and who's involved?
Yep, so they are administered through the learning team for technology and operations. There's probably about 6 or 8 of them at this point. We focus more on technical skills than soft skills with them. We leave the soft skills to our talent engagement folks at a corporate level. So we're focusing on things like AI, machine learning, and that sort of thing. They generally meet on a quarterly basis, but they've all got a Google site that houses best practices and documentation and that sort of thing. They keep the recordings of their sessions. They usually bring in a leader to speak on a specific topic that would be relevant. They also maintain a G+ chat channel, if you will, where folks can collaborate and connect and reach out and ask questions. So I'd be happy to talk through that more with you.
I'd like to quickly give you 5 keys to success in any blended learning approach that we've learned over the years for this to be successful, and then we'll take a couple more questions. The first is the e-learning has to be good. We've all gone to compliance training for page turners and been bored to tears. So the e-learning has to be good because you're transferring knowledge via this, and it has to set up people to work well. The second is what you do in class cannot be redundant with the learning. Otherwise, why do the class and why do the e-learning work in the first place? So when you're coming together, you're to build upon that knowledge. The third has to do with expectations. And that is that the students have to understand that they have to do the pre-work, and management has to understand that they give people the time to do the pre-work. Good blended learning should cut your human interaction time in half, and the overall learning time by a quarter, if it's done well. That's what we've kind of learned over the years. So setting those expectations. The fourth, and probably got these 2 out of order, is it's a completely new role for an instructor. The instructor is going to be kind of the sage on the stage and really likes the eyeball lighting up when the Pareto chart all of a sudden comes together, but isn't really willing to measure their success by how well people are able to apply. Not the smiley faces, because that's the e-learning's job, not the post-assessment, but how well are they able to apply. That's the measure of the instructor. And the fifth is that this is complex. And we're teaching the most complex subject in business, in doing operational excellence. And so there are a lot of moving parts. And just we've learned how to do instructor-led training over the years, because that's all we've done. And there are a lot of moving parts, but we know how to do that. And so there are a lot of new moving parts within blended learning that we don't know how to do if we're going to do it well. And so the fifth thing is really have a system that allows you to pull all those different pieces together. So however you're doing it in whatever, I would suggest that you look at those 5 things. Question?
Yeah, two. First one's quick, I think. That is from the assignment standpoint for what belts will work, what projects are available. Do you tend to find it's better to have them work something within their area or purposely have them work outside their area?
Generally, we have them work in their own area.
There's baggage that we're bringing.
It's more of the fact that there's a leader who's championing that project and has taken the cost out of the business and driving it.
So we get value back for that.
Yeah.
Thank you. The second question was really, you said there's a lot of demand and minimal spots. So what's part of the criteria for assessing those who get selected to be part of it?
So we look at a number of things, and we actually send a form to the manager and have them rate different things about the candidate. And when we have to make tough decisions, that's really what we're looking at. We look at performance ratings. So Nielsen is a meritocracy, and we will target top performers for this.
I'm sorry, when you say manager, the wave manager?
No, the associate manager, the potential candidate.
Who may not have experience in this either, so.
Correct, yeah. So that's how we go about it.
Let's do one more question.
Just going back to the Agile question, so you're using the design work, the future state as sort of the basis for getting the features that we put in the Agile sprint, is that how it is?
So once we define what the improvements are going to be,
Future state.
yeah, so then we put that into a backlog and break it out.
So the features are pulled from your future state.
Yes.
There's a lot to this blended learning thing in this lean out that space. If you would like to kind of explore possibilities and opportunities, we would love to kick that around with you. Jennifer would be happy to as well. My colleague Lee Sorrell back here. If you want to see her on the way out, that would be great. And Jen, I want to thank you again for, first of all, for being a customer. It's always nice to work with a delighted customer. And second, thank you for the brevity of your presentation so that we could have rich discussion, and I think everybody's hopefully gotten some of their questions answered, and hopefully you leave with a kernel of knowledge that you didn't have when you came in here. Because we're doing important work, folks. We're teaching people how to think, and if we can scale up how people think, then that's pretty awesome work to do. So thanks for all you do in this space.
Thank you.